I was browsing an auction with my good friend Mark, just a casual weekend pastime, when I unexpectedly ran into Sophia, the Wall Street heiress who had always been particularly fond of me. Sophia splashed out at the auction, ultimately securing the gemstone I had long coveted and cherished. At that moment, I felt a pang of disappointment, but I figured she must have had her reasons, so I didn't dwell on it too much. However, the next day, when I saw the gemstone set in an earring on the ear of that strikingly handsome male intern at the office, I was flooded with a mix of emotions. On the outside, I remained calm and composed, but inside, I was in turmoil. I called my friend who worked at the boutique, purchased the same design, and had 200 pairs of earrings custom-made and delivered to Harvard University's dormitory building number 1. If she wanted to give them away, I'd make sure she had plenty to give. On a whim, I also had my lawyer draft a divorce agreement, planning to present it to Sophia at the right moment. That day, all the students in Harvard's dormitory building number 1 received gifts from the CEO of Umeng Technology, except for that male intern. The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to subscribe. When Sophia entered the banquet hall with David, the atmosphere was at its peak. The young and handsome guy was affectionately linked arm in arm with Sophia, beaming with a bright smile. The crowd that had been surrounding me dispersed instantly, their faces now wearing a mix of sympathy and awkward grins. I never expected that Sophia would actually bring him out in public. We were a marriage of convenience, our families being two of the most prominent Wall Street dynasties. I had thought she would at least give me some face, but I was proven wrong. What's going on with everyone? Are they all mesmerized by the new secretary? I offered an explanation on her behalf, and the crowd finally seemed to understand. Sophia acted as if nothing had happened, walking up to me and softly calling out, "James." David also cooed, "Mr. James." I suppressed the urge to vomit and smiled at them. We're all adults here, there's no need to wear our emotions on our sleeves, especially in this circle where the most important skill is the art of disguise. You have to pretend to be happy even when you're not, and like someone even when you despise them. Besides, Sophia's status meant that causing a scene would benefit no one. However, when I saw the gemstone on David's earring, my heart instantly turned cold. Just 10 minutes earlier, I had watched Sophia gently and patiently brush away a strand of hair from David's forehead and straighten his crooked bow tie. When I saw her leave the auction house yesterday, I had thought that gemstone was a gift for me. Sweetness had seeped into my heart, and I was eagerly anticipating a surprise. I even went to the barber shop this morning for a suitable haircut and had a makeup artist meticulously work on my appearance. Yet, even after getting ready, she never presented the gift to me. I had called her indirectly to probe whether she had prepared a gift for me, only to be told she hadn't. But on the other end of the line, I heard a clear male voice, "Miss Sophia, would Mr. James be upset if he knew?" "No, he's always generous and wouldn't mind." At that moment, I finally realized how naive I had been. Sophia might have betrayed our relationship long ago. She was right, I've always been generous, but I didn't want to stoop to the level of that little green tea. David followed Sophia around the entire time, seemingly smiling sweetly at me, but the provocation and arrogance in his eyes were hard to conceal. I let out a cold laugh. He was just an inexperienced, naive college student who truly believed Sophia took him seriously. I stared at his ear and slowly said, "The gemstone on your earring is quite nice. It must have been a gift from someone, right?" David wasn't stupid, he understood what I was implying without my having to spell it out. As a college student, he couldn't possibly afford something so high-end. David glanced at me in surprise, then quickly shifted his gaze to Sophia. As expected, Sophia explained for him, "James, don't get the wrong idea. David felt wronged during his internship at the company. As a leader, it's only natural to buy him something to cheer him up. There's nothing between us." I raised my glass to her, smiling to show my understanding, and then turned to make a phone call to my assistant. In a short while, the phone rang, and Sophia stepped aside to answer it. Just then, a familiar matron came over to chat with me, asking who David was. I knew the question was laced with sarcasm. People's eyes are sharp, they aren't blind. Everyone could see how protective Sophia had been of that boy just now. I mercilessly exposed him, he's probably a lovesick fool trying to climb the social ladder by using a woman. David's face turned pale instantly, his expression a mix of shame and grievance, his beautiful eyes brimming with tears. What a pitiable, innocent-looking little puppy. No wonder Sophia liked him. The person who had asked was probably taken aback by my bluntness and wisely turned to leave. I folded my arms and sneered at David, "Mr. David, at your age, you should focus on your studies, do more practice problems, and do something practical, like taking the civil service exam. Don't entertain unrealistic fantasies, or you might end up losing both your wife and your position." He knew I was trying to embarrass him, and after muttering for a while, he couldn't manage to say a word. I sneered inwardly. Being used to being generous, he really thought I was a pushover. I was about to mock him further when Sophia returned. She walked up to me and said bluntly, "You were the one who ordered the gemstone earrings?" Emily was quite efficient. I replied nonchalantly, "Yes. Why order so many when you don't even wear them?" I leaned against the pillar and teased with a smile, "Of course, it's to help you do favors. These days, college students have it tough. They work hard and suffer during their internships. Buying them a little gift to cheer them up is the least we can do." Finally, a flicker of emotion crossed Sophia's face, but she quickly regained her composure. She was always good at hiding her feelings. She then casually wrapped her arm around my waist and whispered into my ear with a teasing tone, "It's just an earring. If you like it, I'll buy you another one. Scaring the new guy isn't important. What matters is that I'd be heartbroken if you got upset." Her voice was as always husky and charming, like many nights of intimacy, her cool breath brushing against my ear. In the past, she did this to flirt, but now, it was to extricate David from this messy situation. I followed her lead, gently placed my hand on her back, and pulled her closer, using the same tone to say, "You know David's intentions better than I do. I don't care just about that gemstone, Sophia. I didn't mind what you did in the past, but don't forget that I'm your husband now. Making a big deal out of this benefits neither of us. I hope this is the last time." I almost gritted my teeth when I said the last sentence, with a hint of menace. Amidst the clinking of glasses, others only thought we were flirting, and the surroundings erupted into a round of enthusiastic teasing. I felt her stiffness, smiled, patted her back, and turned to pick up a glass of champagne and walked to the other side. The banquet ended, and guests began to leave one by one. I thought I had made my stance clear enough and my disgust evident enough, yet I still underestimated the thickness of some people's skins. When it was time to leave, David wanted to get into the car with us. David's school is far away, and he can't get a taxi easily. "It's on our way, so we might as well give him a ride," Sophia said to me. With such a seemingly reasonable excuse, I mercilessly exposed the fallacy, coldly retorting, "One is in the south of the city, and the other is in the north. How is that on our way?" Sophia's brow visibly furrowed, and David looked at me with tearful eyes. The scene made me appear unnecessarily obstructive and bullying. Seeing that I wasn't buying it, Sophia tried to appeal to my emotions. "James, you've always been sensible." Her words were cut short by my interruption. "What if I don't allow it?" David, with red eyes, approached me. "Mr. James, I shouldn't have taken your gemstone. It's my fault tonight. But I really can't get a taxi now. How about I trade you my favorite perfume?" He handed me an exquisitely packaged perfume bottle. Judging by the expensive-looking packaging, it was probably a gift from Sophia. I wrinkled my nose in disdain and asked him, "What does this perfume smell like?" "It reeks of green tea." The repeated humiliation caused David's face to flush with anger, and he stood there, holding back tears. Sophia, who had been pretending to be a lady all night, finally couldn't maintain her composure and said sternly, "James, you're being excessive." I sneered, "Is this excessive? Sophia, don't forget that I'm the host of this banquet tonight. Without my father's mediation, your business deal wouldn't have gone through." Without waiting for her reaction, I pushed aside the tearful David and got into the car. After all, we were business people, masters of weighing pros and cons. Sophia knew what my words implied. She was pampered, but I had also been born with a silver spoon in my mouth, a cold and precious young master. In the world of fame and fortune, emotions carried little weight. In the end, she followed me into the car, and an oppressive silence filled the cabin. I didn't deign to compete with a young man for a woman, but my status in the circle meant that if word got out that I had been abandoned by my wife on the street, it wouldn't look good. Especially when I noticed that the passenger seat had been adjusted, I had to admit that I was still too low in the ranks and was irritated by a naive young man. Who adjusted this seat? It was obvious to anyone with common sense. On the armrest of the car window, there was even a sticky note that read David's seat. A burst of anger surged through me. I wanted to kick the woman in front of me out of the car and run back to slap David. Just as I was about to explode, the phone rang abruptly. David's sobbing voice was particularly noticeable in the quiet cabin. "Sophia, I can't get a taxi. It seems like someone is following me. I'm so scared. Can you come and get me?" Without a moment's hesitation, Sophia slammed on the brakes and pulled over to the side of the road, comforting him. "Okay, don't worry. Stay where you are, and I'll come pick you up." I stopped adjusting the seat and turned to her in disbelief. Sophia frowned. "James, you go home first. David might be in danger. I'll go check on him." I was amused by her naivety. This is the busiest commercial street. There are crowds of people for miles around. Heading towards Harvard, there are several police stations. What kind of danger could there be? Are you his mother? If there's danger, why not call the police instead of you? Sophia was left speechless by my retort. After a moment, she closed her eyes in frustration, took a deep breath, and then opened them again, saying, James, we're both men. Can't you put yourself in my shoes? Is it really necessary to be so hard on me just because of a gemstone? I didn't budge an inch. Are you blind, Sophia? Can't you see that he's provoking me? And because of a stranger, you want to leave me here? The emotions in Sophia's eyes shifted rapidly, from anger to indifference, and finally to disappointment. James, when did you become so unreasonable? You weren't like this before. I sneered. Unreasonable? Sophia, this is the first time you've argued with me because of another man. Sophia abruptly turned her head to the window, clearly not wanting to continue the conversation. Have you forgotten that before we got married, we agreed to respect each other, even if we didn't have feelings? You wouldn't flirt around, and I wouldn't either. It's not just for us but also for the reputation of our families. Are you willing to break the rules for him? In the quiet cabin, all that could be heard was Sophia's heavy breathing. I knew she was wavering, and in this pointless tug-of-war, I had temporarily won. That night, Sophia and I slept in separate rooms. Her reason was that I was too domineering, making her feel suffocated, and she needed some independent space to calm down. It was for the best, as it gave me plenty of time to think. I realized it was the first time Sophia had embarrassed me for another boy. The Sophia family and the James family were old acquaintances, but Sophia and I hadn't met many times. I had only heard a few stories about the eldest daughter of the Sophia family from the elders, and my initial impression of her was that she was an uneducated, spoiled rich girl. However, at the arranged marriage banquet 3 years ago, I had to admit that I was attracted by her unique charm. Beneath her pretty and elegant appearance lay a witty and humorous heart, and she handled problems with ease. So when our parents proposed the marriage, I agreed. With our family backgrounds and education, we appreciated each other and quickly became engaged. I never thought about whether I loved her or not. Growing up in a business family, the first lesson I learned was to weigh pros and cons. After marriage, we each held shares, and the two companies achieved an unprecedented integration. Our careers also flourished. I always thought that Sophia and I were the best choices for each other after weighing the pros and cons. But somehow, she seemed to have started liking me. The once arrogant Wall Street heiress would cuddle with me in the middle of the night, cooing and acting cute, burying her head in my shoulder and rubbing against me. In the cold winter, she would wrap my cold feet in her flannel pajamas. I would also make her red sugar water during her menstrual period and tilt the umbrella towards her in the rain, not minding that half of my shoulder got wet. Just a while ago, she told me, James, you will always be my first choice. But everything changed with David's appearance. After so many years of dealing with the world of fame and fortune, this was the first time I felt unprecedented exhaustion. My phone vibrated with a WeChat message from Sophia. Good night, James, along with a cute cat emoji. That's Sophia for you. Even during a Cold War, her emotions are always hard to read, and she still plays her part to the fullest. I had a bit of a headache from drinking last night and planned to make a cup of milk. However, I found a small crack in the ceramic cup I often used. I called the maid and asked who had touched it. She replied nervously, We don't know, sir. You told us not to wash it, and we haven't touched it. I had indeed said that. It was a custom-made cup by a pottery master I liked, which Sophia had specially ordered for me last year. She had even taken a detour to Germany while on a business trip to get it, and I had always cherished it. But now it had a flaw. The maid asked cautiously, should I get it repaired? I said no. Because it was precious, even the smallest flaw was irreparable. A few minutes later, a surveillance video appeared on my phone. In the video, David picked up my ceramic cup, then grinned mischievously and deliberately let go, dropping it into the sink. Sophia had actually brought him to my house. Yesterday's gemstone had upset me only because I regretted a good thing being wasted. David didn't deserve it. Wearing it on his ear was like putting a beautiful flower in cow dung. But now he had dared to enter my room, touch my cup, and wreak havoc on my territory. That was an outright provocation. A burst of anger surged through me, burning away all my rationality. I swept my hand across the table, and the exquisite porcelain cup shattered on the floor. Along with it, my marriage to Sophia was shattered as well. I walked into the room and called my lawyer friend. Hey, Robert, draft a divorce agreement for me as soon as possible. Given my status, if a cup has a crack, I'd rather let it shatter completely. Similarly, I don't want a woman who has been tainted. In the morning, Sophia was nowhere to be seen. The maid told me that she had left in a hurry after receiving a phone call. I thought it must have been from David again. After getting ready and having breakfast, I went to work on my own. At the company entrance, I was almost knocked over by a little boy. The porridge in his hand splashed all over my suit jacket. He was panicked and incoherent as he apologized, frantically pulling out tissues to wipe the stains off my coat. I instinctively wanted to say it was okay, but the boy suddenly knelt down, clutching my arm and begging for my forgiveness. It was summer, yet he was wearing an ill-fitting, tattered thick coat, and his face was dirty. The moment he looked up, I had an intuition that he seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Ignoring his odd behavior, I waved to the security guard to take him away. As I reached for a wet wipe, I realized that my phone, which had been in my pocket, was missing. Suddenly realizing what had happened, I grabbed the boy's arm and searched his coat pocket. Sure enough, my phone was there. A surge of anger rushed to my head. The boy finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation, kneeling on the ground and sobbing as he apologized and pleaded for mercy. I looked coldly at the boy in front of me and gestured to the security guard to take him away, saying, "A child must learn to respect himself. It's not your fault that you were born into a bad situation, but you have hands and feet. You shouldn't resort to such despicable acts." This scene was witnessed by Sophia, who had just stepped out of her car across the street. From a distance, her gaze was filled with coldness and estrangement. She only saw the boy kneeling in front of me, crying and begging for mercy, without understanding the whole story. Perhaps in her eyes, I had always been someone who was high and mighty and lacked compassion. Last night, when she said I was too domineering and made her feel suffocated, she must have been referring to this kind of feeling. But what did it matter? A child who steals a needle when young will steal gold when grown up. If I don't discipline him now, there will be plenty of police to deal with him when he really gets into trouble. After a morning of meetings, it wasn't until noon that I had the chance to change my soiled clothes. The suit was one of my favorites, custom made by a designer I admired abroad, but now it was ruined. I sighed inwardly. Ever since David came into the picture, everything seemed to go wrong. In just one day and night, I had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The phone rang abruptly, and it was Robert asking about the divorce agreement. Just as I was about to answer, my assistant informed me that Sophia had arrived. I texted Robert back, saying we would meet in the afternoon. Sophia stormed in, followed by a tearful David. Sigh, young men these days are really too fragile. She sat down in front of me and sighed. Because of what happened last night, David was ridiculed and ostracized by his classmates. He almost had to sleep on the street. Was it necessary for you to be so ruthless? I calmly looked at them and suddenly laughed. So, when you were his lover, you were quite tough, but now you can't stand it anymore? James, Sophia took a deep breath, seemingly trying to restrain her emotions. I just gave him a gemstone. You have a comfortable life and don't lack that one. Why not just let it go? Why do you have to target him so much that he can't hold his head up in front of his classmates? I leisurely poured myself a cup of tea, took a sip, and only then looked at them again. I hadn't deliberately suppressed the events of yesterday. In fact, when I sent the gifts, I had my assistant exaggerate and tell stories about David's disgraceful deeds. Now, probably the entire Harvard University knows about David's thinking about marrying a swan. As a century-old prestigious institution, Harvard is always in the spotlight, and even the slightest disturbance can make headlines. The university's board of directors would certainly not tolerate students with improper conduct. Indeed, I am not short of fine things. But wasn't I doing you a favor? Moreover, the gifts received by over 200 people in their dormitory building are not even comparable to the gemstone on David's earring. I was clearly helping him improve his relationships with his classmates. So, Mr. David, have your classmates thanked you? Thanks to you, they all received gifts. David, who had been hiding behind the scenes like a coward, stepped forward eagerly and said, Mr. G, I apologize to you, okay? Please let me off the hook. I was wrong yesterday. Don't argue with Sophia. She didn't sleep all night, and I'm really worried. As he spoke, he was on the verge of tears. I really couldn't stand this delicate young man. I sneered, Sophia, your little lover is quite considerate of you. Even when he's in trouble, he still cares about you. James. Sophia scolded me. I didn't budge an inch and slammed the teacup in my hand onto the coffee table. You want me to apologize to David? Are you kidding me? When have I, James, ever backed down? Growing up, everyone has always revolved around me, following my orders and heeding my opinions. My parents have never even touched a hair on my head. Sophia, what kind of daydream are you having? I folded my arms and looked at the two clowns in front of me with amusement. Perhaps stimulated by my contemptuous attitude, for the first time in 3 years of marriage, Sophia lost her temper. She smashed the set of teacups on the coffee table and left the office in a rage, dragging David along. I looked regretfully at the shattered pieces on the floor, another loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars. An hour later, I received a message on my phone that Sophia was blatantly taking David on a business trip. It seemed that divorce needed to be put on the agenda sooner, and the division of property had to be replanned. In the evening, when I met with Robert, he also said that I was too domineering and that women usually prefer gentle and considerate men. My tough attitude had instead aroused Sophia's protective instinct towards David. What a joke! There was no way I would back down. I, James, am wealthy, handsome, and capable. I am not short of women. I can remain chaste for the sake of marriage, so why can't Sophia be honest and faithful? Robert teased with a smile, but I think David is quite similar to you. Maybe Mrs. Sophia is just looking for a younger version of you from your past, reminiscing about old times? I punched him without hesitation. Don't disgust me. Hey, I'm serious. His short hair is like a carbon copy of you in college. What do you think Mrs. Sophia is after? She has a perfectly good real husband but prefers to coddle a knockoff. His words reminded me that when I first saw David, I had a sense of déjà vu. Who knows? Maybe he is a bit gentler and more sensible. The sharp alcohol made my head feel heavy, and it wasn't until I was about to leave that I remembered the important matter. Is the divorce agreement ready? Yes. But when do you plan to bring it up with her? At the end of the month. It's the old man's birthday, and I'll give Sophia a big gift then. There were still 2 weeks left until the end of the month, enough time for me to finalize the division of assets and plan my next steps. My marriage with Sophia wasn't just a matter between two people, it involved too many interest disputes, so I had to be extremely careful and meticulously settle the accounts. However, I didn't forget to keep an eye on Sophia and David's every move. I just didn't want to dirty my own eyes by being a peeping Tom, so I left the task to my assistant. It wasn't that I still had lingering feelings for her, it was just to gather evidence of Sophia's infidelity during our marriage, in order to secure the best possible outcome for myself. So every evening, I would receive screenshots from social media. Judging from the screenshots, David's social media feed was updated very frequently, his boss accompanying him shopping, skydiving together, working overtime together, traveling to Iceland to see the northern lights, and experiencing scuba diving. There was even a more disgusting post showing their hands intertwined with the caption, "Recording our first time in bed." I read through each one, shocked at what kind of fool Sophia had found. How could he dare to post such things online? He really had no shame left. Reading these posts made me feel like my eyes were being dirted. Fortunately, tomorrow was the old man's birthday, and these annoying matters would finally come to an end. The next day after work, Sophia unexpectedly called me, saying she would come to pick me up and we would go home together for dinner. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to contact me after such a long Cold War. Having seen their disgusting behavior, I was no longer surprised by anything they did. After all, they had already slept in the same bed. So when I learned the next day that Sophia was attending the family dinner with David, I wasn't surprised either. Especially when the car door opened and they sat side by side in the back seat, I calmly accepted my place in the passenger seat. The driver glanced at me awkwardly. "Sir, this." This time, I didn't argue or make a fuss. I just smiled reassuringly at the driver. "It's okay. I'll sit in the front." Compared to David's chatter, Sophia remained silent throughout the ride, her thin lips tightly pursed and her dark eyes filled with indiscernible emotions as she kept looking at me in the front seat. I pretended not to notice, leaning against the window and closing my eyes to rest. Upon entering the house, David greeted everyone with ease. He seemed to have a natural talent for ingratiating himself, and in just a few words, he had my mother-in-law beaming with joy. During the wait, he kept her entertained with stories about Sophia's amusing work experiences. Both Sophia and I were the type of people who rarely shared our work and life with our families. David's personality was clearly endearing to my mother-in-law. When asked about some trivial matters of Sophia's life, he answered fluently. I watched all of this calmly, my heart no longer stirred by anything. When we sat down at the dining table, David naturally followed closely beside Sophia. She paused for a moment but didn't object. That was supposed to be my seat, and by doing so, he was blatantly disrespecting me. The atmosphere at the table gradually became strange. Everyone was perceptive and finally realized something was off. My mother-in-law tried to ease the tension, pulling me by the hand to sit on the other side. "Come on, James, sit here. All your favorite dishes are here. Make sure to try some later." One doesn't hit a smiling face, and thinking about what I was about to say, I suddenly felt a bit sad. Over the years, my mother-in-law had been genuinely kind to me, but my values wouldn't allow me to find a woman in the trash. When the meal was almost over, I gracefully wiped my mouth and said, "Mom, Dad, Grandpa, I have something to tell you." Sophia seemed to sense something and quickly looked up, a hint of panic in her eyes. They asked, "What is it, James?" I smiled and said, "Sophia is pregnant." Upon hearing this, the elder's eyes all brightened. "Really? When did this happen?" I nodded and continued, "I just found out. It's been over 40 days. My mother-in-law excitedly grabbed my hand and started chattering. Only Sophia's expression was a mix of shock, doubt, and disbelief, with various emotions flickering across her face. She knew what I meant. 40 days coincided with the time she had traveled with David. In other words, the child wasn't mine. I steeled myself and dropped another bombshell, but I want to divorce Sophia. It felt as if a sound-muffling bomb had been dropped into the air. The previously lively atmosphere vanished in an instant. In the silence, my grandfather spoke up in a deep voice, "James, tell me, did Sophia do something wrong?" I was touched that at this moment, they still believed in me. Especially my grandfather, who hadn't taken to David since he walked in the door. I suppressed the lump in my throat and calmly said, "Because the child isn't mine. It's his." "James," Sophia's tone was calm but tinged with a hint of dissatisfaction, "stop making a fuss." I laughed and said, "Making a fuss? Which part are you referring to? The pregnancy is real, and the infidelity is real. Do I need to spell it out even more clearly?" Sophia abruptly stood up, knocking over the plate closest to her, and shouted at me, "I've told you a million times, I didn't cheat. Is it all about that gemstone? Do you get some kind of pleasure from bullying the weak?" In the most inappropriate setting, I burst into laughter. Until now, she still thought I was arguing with her over a gemstone. Until now, she still believed I was being unreasonable and bullying her. As I laughed, my eyes inexplicably grew sore. "Sophia, how blind can you be to say such a thing?" David, who had been silent all along, weakly called out Sophia. My father-in-law slammed his hand on the table, "You shut up. James, tell us, what exactly happened?" I gestured to my assistant to bring the photos I had prepared in advance. At that moment, the maid entered. "Sir, madam, there's a courier delivery." What a lack of tact! What courier had to be delivered at this moment? The maid nervously said, It is, but the courier emphasized that it's very important and must be brought in right away. My mother-in-law quickly snatched it and opened it. As she looked through it, her face grew increasingly ugly. Inside were various explicit photos of Sophia and David, some so graphic that I couldn't bear to look. "You wicked daughter!" Immediately, my mother-in-law threw the photos at Sophia and David's faces. The scene descended into chaos and arguments. My grandfather struck Sophia's back with his cane. "You disgraceful woman. You've ruined the reputation of the Sophia family." My mother-in-law covered her face and sobbed, "James, we're sorry for what we've done to you." The chaos and arguments seemed to be just as I had anticipated, but I didn't feel any sense of revenge. I quietly hid the photos I had yet to take out behind my back. As for Sophia, when she saw all of this, the blood drained completely from her face. She moved her lips, as if she had muttered an "I'm sorry." I looked at her expressionlessly, my heart a mix of complex emotions. In just 3 years, what had once been a sensational high-society marriage had come to such a sorry state. But what did it matter? I wasn't the one who had caused all of this. It wasn't in my nature to endure grievances quietly. Often, taking a step back only emboldened others to push further, and it didn't lead to a broader horizon. These consequences were what they deserved. After that day, I returned to my own home. My parents were aware of the situation with Sophia and tactfully avoided mentioning it, giving me great respect. My mother tentatively asked a few times, "What about the child? Does Sophia plan to keep it?" My answer was that I didn't know. The child wasn't mine, and whether she kept it or not was her decision, not mine. My mother was heartbroken by my situation and let me rest at home for 2 weeks. Since I was too lazy to move around, she treated me like a baby, feeding me daily. In just a few days, my complexion visibly improved, and I even gained 2 kilograms. I lived carefree for a few days. Half a month after returning home, Sophia sought me out. The usually proud and self-satisfied woman had red eyes and looked at me sorrowfully. "James, can we not divorce? Do you mind that the child isn't yours? I'll have an abortion, and we can start over. I promise to treat you well from now on." It was as if I had heard the most absurd joke in the world, and I laughed mercilessly. "Why should your child be aborted?" Sophia clutched my shoulders, her voice trembling as she took a deep breath, as if making a great resolution. "All right, if you can accept the child, then let it be born. I believe you will treat him as your own. Can we not divorce?" I looked at the woman in front of me in shock. That high and mighty lady, who had always been pampered and adored, could actually be so humble at this moment. But at this moment, all I felt was numbness. "Sophia, there's no need for this. I must divorce you. I'll send you the division of assets later. I've tried to be fair and just. If you have any objections, you can always communicate with me. Sophia stood there, frozen, opened her mouth, and her voice trembled noticeably. Is there really no way back? I replied resolutely, yes. Hearing this, she seemed to have her soul sucked out. Her spine suddenly collapsed, and she loosened her grip on my shoulders, then took a half step back. All right, I understand. She paused for a moment, then explained on her own. Do you know why I felt differently about David? Because I always thought he was too much like you when you were young, especially with his short hair. It was exactly like your college photos. This wasn't surprising, Robert had said the same thing to me. I admit that sometimes I found you too domineering, not like a husband. You always had an air of superiority, which made me uncomfortable. I wanted you to depend on me more. I'm your wife, and I wanted you to consult me on matters. But it seemed that wouldn't happen. You were used to making all the decisions yourself. So David's appearance quickly caught my attention. He was gentle, sensible, and clingy, which indeed aroused my protective instincts. So I hired him into the company. At first, I wanted to use him to test you, to see if you would get jealous or realize your own issues. She sighed bitterly and said, but I guess I was wrong. But James, you are the only man I have truly loved in all these years. At that moment, I couldn't quite discern what I was feeling. I steadied myself, forcing myself to detach from those memories. Sophia, I don't doubt that you loved me. I'm not a block of wood, I could feel it. I don't regret the 3 years we spent together, but you shouldn't blame your promiscuity on me. I didn't make you cheat. I knew you hired David into the company, and I didn't ask because I trusted you and our agreement. I always believed that only those who are equally matched can stay together longer, but I didn't expect all of this to become the pressure you mentioned. Sophia's eyes were filled with pain as she took a step forward, seemingly wanting to hold my hand, but I subtly dodged. James, realizing she was in the wrong, she didn't say anything more. Our problem was never about that gemstone. So, in the end, you didn't love me that much, it was just a matter of responsibility and status that forced you to love me. Let's divorce and leave each other with a bit of dignity. After saying this, I turned around and left without looking back. A few days later, Sophia had her secretary send me a folder containing the signed divorce agreement and proof of assets. After 3 years of entanglement, we parted ways with a semblance of dignity. When Sophia was 5 months pregnant, I learned about David's recent situation from Robert. The young man had some courage to claim that since Sophia was carrying his child, she had to be his wife and forced her to marry him. I stirred my cold drink, waiting for him to continue. He still hasn't seen much of the world. The Sophia family is such a prominent household, they would never accept someone like him. What happened next? He was thrown out by the Sophia family's security and was caught by the media, which was a complete humiliation. Robert clicked his tongue and continued, I heard this caused quite a stir at Harvard University, and he was expelled. I was shocked and asked, expelled? That's a bit extreme, isn't it? Not really. Oh, do you remember the anonymous package the Sophia family received that day? I asked in confusion, what about it? He continued, it was sent by David's younger brother, a thin little boy. It turns out David had stolen money from his mother that was meant to save her life to pay for his girlfriend's abortion, which led to his mother's death. His brother was exacting revenge. TSK, these two brothers are both ruthless. Distant memories began to resurface, and I suddenly remembered the little boy who had stolen my phone at the company entrance. So that's how it was, a case of karma. I shook my head silently, realizing that from then on, the complexities of the world had nothing to do with me anymore. At 30, my life was just beginning.